so much for being here. We, of course, are celebrating Tracy Badua's YA debut, This Is Not a Personal Statement. Let's all give it a round of applause. We are very thankful to have you again here, Tracy. We loved having you last year for your middle grade and debut for Freddy versus the Family Curse. And we were stunned that the love of support you have and have today. We're just so glad that you could be a part of this with us. For those of you who are joining us virtually, hello, welcome. We, of course, are here with Tracy Badua and in conversation with Kat De Los Reyes. Sorry. Tracy is a Filipino American author of books about young people with sunny hearts and in sometimes stormy world. As I mentioned, she had her event last year with us for Freddy vs. the Family Curse. And of course, this is her YA debut. This is not a personal statement. By day, she is an attorney who works in national housing policy and programs. And by night, she squeezes in writing, family time, and bites of her secret candy stash. In conversation, we have Kat De Los Reyes, who has been a bookstagrammer since 2020 and a reader since she was 3 years old. We are very fortunate you can also be here with us for such a wonderful event, and I understand you both are friends, correct?
Yes.
Yes. So even more in person to actually dig in on all the good stuff. If anyone who is watching virtually has any questions they want to ask, there's going to be a submit a question button that you'll notice at the bottom of the screen, and then we'll make sure to ask those questions later in the program. And you'll also notice you can get a signed book by Tracy, any one of her two books, both of them if you want, in fact, at any point. All right, I'll go ahead and let these two wonderful people take it away.
Tracy, do you want to say a few words first? Yeah, thank you everybody for coming. I just want to do a quick couple words. The HarperCollins Union has been on strike since November 10, 2022. They're on day maybe 50, 51 at this point. And I did, by the refreshments, include a QR code if you're interested in learning more about what they're striking for, and if you're interested in donating to their strike fund. And then a second thing, 3 years as a bookstagrammer. So a quick round of applause for
thanks.
Kat.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
I think the answer was no.
Oh. Can you hear me now? Yes. Okay, great. So Nick said a couple of things already about Tracy, but I also wanted to say, so Tracy and I have been friends for a few years now since I moved to San Diego. And she is my personal role model because we're in a professional group together. We're both attorneys, but she is living my dream life. She's written 2 books now, and this is her second book, and I'm just so very, very proud of her. So I just wanted to start the question with, so describe your latest book. This is not a personal statement. This is your first YA book, right?
Yeah, so this is my first published young adult book. It's contemporary, so there's no magic or sci-fi in it, unfortunately, which would have been probably more fun because then I wouldn't have had to deal with like emotions and I could just have wizards. So it is about this girl, Perla. She is, all set to go to the college of her dreams, except she doesn't get accepted. So instead of just dealing with the rejection, she decides she's going to go move on campus anyway. So she crashes classes, dodges security, just kind of tries to gather intel so she can reapply in spring semester and then hopefully get in. So that's her grand plan.
Okay. What was your inspiration for writing this particular story?
So I remember reading an article way back when about somebody who was caught on the campus of like an elite school, and they'd been there for months. And I remember reading it and being like, wow, that's a really intense story. I totally get why they would do that. And then I paused and I was like, that shouldn't be my first reaction, that I completely understand why somebody would fake going to an elite school. So I kind of had to sit with that for a while and be like, why was completely understanding someone's motivation for faking it? Why was that what I resonated with? So that eventually, took a couple of years to really work its way out into what became this book.
And how long did it take you to actually start writing that draft?
So I remember, because remember talking to somebody about this, about the story about the person who was caught on campus, and they were like, "Wow, that would make a good book." And I remember thinking like, "Oh, huh, if only I was good enough to do something like that." That was, I think, back in 2017.
Oh, wow.
So, and then at some point, and I forget what year it was, I decided to try to write this as a NaNoWriMo book, which is the National Novel Writing Month, where you just sit down and you write like 50,000 words in 1 month. And that was a terrible draft. I don't think much of that ended up in what is the book today. Like, even some of the thing, like, I think they started out like the first chapter was them eating at a restaurant for some reason. Like, it was just completely out there, but it got me in the practice of getting into the headspace and writing the book and figuring out like what would actually work and what wouldn't. So fast drafted in a month, and then just took maybe a couple years on and off to revise, because I had to get away from it, hopefully get my writing better, and then come back to it.
So in the book, you kind of had to go back into the headspace of a teenage girl.
Yes.
So Perla is 16 years old in the book. And she graduates high school early. It's not a spoiler. I was very scared of doing spoilers because I did I did another event and everybody booed me.
Oh, no.
So Perla is 16, and she says that right off the bat, so it's not a spoiler. What made you decide to make her so young and graduate high school so young?
This was kind of a conscious choice I made, not only because, for young adult books, like the age range is like you have to have your main character in a certain age range, but really thinking again, what would possess someone to take a college rejection and bring it all the way to, I'm just going to go and nobody will know, it'll be fine. So there had to be some reasons. And I think part of it was like, if I could really play off the emotional immaturity she maybe has at that point, of her thinking like, this is fine, I can do this, instead of let me just fess up to people and just deal with the fallout.
Okay. So in the book, in the very, very beginning, there's a dedication page, which I always read. I love reading authors' dedication. So here, I'm going to read it. It's actually, "For my parents and grandmothers, this isn't about you at all." So my question is, how would you describe your parents' parenting style? Like, were they strict? Were they at all like Perla's parents? And you can say what you want. It's a safe space. So.
Hi, Mom. Hi. She's here.
Hi, Tracy's mom. Hi, Tracy's mom.
My mom is here and she's wearing a shirt of my book. But all that to say, like, clearly they are like very supportive, not like the parents in this book. And obviously for this book, again, it was really trying to dig into what would possess somebody to do this. So, not really a spoiler, because I think I'm also very conscious of this because I want to make sure I'm not ruining it for everybody. But I think in a lot of the excerpts and everything online, you see really quickly that her parents are very intense and very driven. In the first couple chapters, it even goes into kind of the cultural reasoning behind like what would possess what would possess this family to always want to show off the best of everything, to show them off as being like successful, and nothing is wrong with this family at all. So I wanted to make sure, like, and for lack of better phrasing, like the whole tiger mom, tiger parenting kind of thing that came up in the news a couple of years ago. Her mom is kind of like that. My mom is not. Everything is good. Everything is good. But in the book, they did have to be a lot more intense. So because of that, I remember writing this and being like, I can't have people hating me. This is fiction. So I very purposely was like, I need to make sure I state this literally up front, like literally right, like on the third physical page of the book. So that's why that's there.
Okay. Well, did that hinder you in any way? Did you censor yourself thinking, okay, my parents are going to read this, my family is going to read this? I always ask that question because I feel like as an author, you're conscious of your audiences, but then you have a family, right? Mm-hmm. So, okay, if I write this, are they going to think it's about me? So, were there anything that you took out after you'd written it because you thought it would affect how your parents or your family would feel?
I didn't take stuff out, but I did. One thing I was careful about, at least with these parents, like I said, there's that concept of, tiger parents or tiger moms. And I wanted to make sure that they were intense, but they weren't caricatures. Like I didn't want people to be like, oh, this is about like a book about like really, intense, driven Asian parents and look what they're doing to their kids. It's like, it's not that. There is more to Perla's story than having intense parents. So that said, I also, if the question was like, what do you or don't you write? Because knowing that people I know are going to write it, there's no romance in it. Like I'm really like, I don't write any like smooching scenes. So, just that.
I thought there was. I thought it was the beginnings of a romance. Again, not a spoiler.
I'll be typing and be like, no, my grandma's going to read this. And I'm like, delete. Shake hands. All right, done.
Shake hands and everything's
like just some nice platonic high fives,
yeah.
just like constant high fives. I don't think there's any high fives in this book.
That actually segues a little bit to my next question. So there's a part in your story where Perla describes a social network for her fellow teens. So Perla goes to this really cutthroat high school, and everybody's like very competitive with each other. And there's a social network that Tracy mentions where kids cover for each other when they're actually going out on dates and doing something fun because they don't want their parents to know. So were you part of that social network? Did you cover anyone when they were secretly dating, or did you do any secret dating yourself?
You're like trying to get me in trouble. No, my husband's here. No. But there was, I wove that in because I 100% knew people like in high school, even into college, of like folks that didn't want to tell their parents that they were dating someone or dating like a certain type of somebody. And it really was because they didn't want to deal with what they like, I guess, perceive of like the judgment or the drama of having that, of dating in general. Cause they're like, oh, it'll take away from your schooling, or like you should be doing this and this and this. I don't remember being asked to cover for anyone, but I do remember having conversations with folks where it's like, oh, you guys have been dating for like 2 years. Like, what do your parents think of them? They're like, they don't know. They don't know about him. I was like, oh, that's a long time. But it happened. So I was like, let me work that into the book, because I feel like that's probably something that continues to this day of like, if I'm just going to get a bunch of guff about it, I'm just not going to say anything. And it kind of feeds into like eventually what Perla does of like, I'm just going to get hassled for not getting into school. I'm just going to pretend to go.
That's very true. It's a lot of, Perla does a lot of, I guess, hiding. And
I called it like flexible morality at one point. And my editor was like, Tracy, that's not a thing.
It is. No, that's
I was like, no, she'll work into it. Like, it's fine.
a great term. Flexible morality.
It's a very lawyer thing, right?
Yeah. Like plausible deniability.
Right.
I didn't know they were dating.
Like, it's kind of good. Like, yeah, it's just like, it's just over the line. Okay. All right.
That's actually something, a little bit of what one of your characters says, like, don't tell me anything more. Don't tell me anything more. That way they have like deniable, what's a plausible deniability? I'm like losing my terms. But I want to know, I feel like my
No.
oh, I have to think about
No spoilers.
I have to think about the way I phrase it.
That as you're coming up with the phrasing though, like I feel like that's how you can kind of tell that there is some lawyerly background, is like I had to really think about it. I had to really be like, all right, so if the girl's parents, there's a girl whose parents are lawyers, and so she kind of acts in that, she has that same mindset of like tell me what I need to know, tell me what I don't need to know. She's really like analytical and really about right and wrong. And hopefully that's not a spoiler, but like it's those kinds of things where it's like when people ask me how does being a lawyer like affect what you write, it's like I kind of like it unfortunately like things like that work their way into the book. I'll be like, I fell down a research rabbit hole of like, now would this be a misdemeanor or a felony? And then it was like 3 a.m. I was like, this isn't even real. Like I just need to just say she committed a crime and then just like move on with it.
Yep, that's actually one of my, you're like anticipating my questions. Gee, I wonder why. So what kind of stumbling blocks did you come across when you were researching a novel? Because part of it is so today's era, everything's electronic, and I think it's so much harder to sneak into a place now where, there's cameras everywhere. You need like a swipe access card versus, let's say, when I went to college, it was like 1,000 years ago. I could sneak in people and they're there for like 4 days and nobody knew. Here, you need access to everything. So how did you do research? What any stumbling blocks along the way, and how did you kind of smooth things over?
That's interesting. You say that like you probably can't do that now, and I feel like you probably still could. I didn't. Just like for full disclosure, I did not like sneak into any campuses, but I did. One of the folks that worked on the book on the editorial side, she threw in some really helpful commentary of like, okay, the whole swipe in key card thing with that. Some schools still use regular keys apparently. So she's like, so that's believable that they would do a swipe in. But what about this? And like, what about those electronic, like for grades and like online portals. And one of the things I had to nobody sends paper acceptance letters anymore.
Yes, actually, we talked about that before your book even got published.
Yeah, it was just like I had to. It's less exciting for me to be like, oh, I didn't get in after after I checked her portal online. Let me code a website real quick. Like I had to just be like, okay, so she will do this, and I have to make sure that the school is like old school enough that they send out paper acceptances. So there was a lot of research into current college practice, so it wouldn't be totally out there. And then also little authorial things of I had to get the timeline right. Like, when is early decision? When is early admissions?
Yeah.
When are these things? So I had to dive right back into that. It's not fun.
Yeah, to me, Delmont sounds like a very prestigious university. So I like the idea of having paper acceptance letters because when I went to college, that's what I got, paper acceptance. You got a thin envelope versus this like envelope. And now it's, you could just look up your name and you get that video. Like
I feel like that's more stressful.
Yeah, and everybody's watching you because someone's like filming. So yeah, so it's a little, I don't know how people do it now. I could never go back to college right now. But I was feeling a lot of Perla's pain in the book because she's so alone, and I felt really bad for her.
Aww.
What surprised you the most about Perla as you were writing her story?
That's interesting because like I feel like what surprised me was how deep into her motivation I had to go, because you have to really. This is kind of a hard story. Like the premise is wild.
Yes.
And so it really, like, you really have to kind of justify why you're taking readers on this journey. Though that said, like, every time I tell somebody about like, oh, this is a book about a girl faking go to college, they'll be like, I know someone who does that. It's like, and I'll be like, really? They're like, oh yeah. Then their parents still pay for X, Y, and Z, and they say they've been in college for 8 years, and they're just like living in a studio in Manhattan. I'm like, what? They're like, oh yeah, it happens all the time. So apparently it is not that unreal. There was, I think, somebody just caught at like another university pretending to be a grad student. Like there's like they're everywhere apparently. So it is not that unrealistic. But for the purpose of the book, it was really like I had to really dive into the headspace of somebody who would pretend to do that. And that was kind of difficult because you also, again, being careful of not making like of really personalizing Perla and not making it a caricature of, oh, an Asian student, really wants to succeed, so they're just going to do this and this and this. Like there is more to her than like, again, the tiger parenting.
Right. And I think I've read a lot of reviews of your book where, comments would come in saying, I feel this so much from my own parents. And when I was reading this, I have teens, and one of them is going to be 17, and one's going to be 15. So in my head, it made me think of putting myself in Perla's parents' shoes. Like, am I putting too much expectations on my kid? I don't know. I am like totally not like my parents, but the way I relate to this book is my parents were a little strict. I don't know if they're watching. I told them not to.
You're probably getting texts as we speak.
Yeah, probably. But as I look back at now, it's more like they wanted the best for me. So, and they didn't really know any other pathway. So it's always go to school, get grades, go to a good college.
Mm-hmm.
But Perla has other her eyes are opened as she, as she meets other people who come from different backgrounds than her, and whose parents or whose upbringing are more open. Like there's this line about, oh, you're just going to community college, like, and that's kind of like the mode that I grew up in. So to me, this book is like perfect because it's a lot of layers. It's a crazy, wild idea, but there's a lot of heart and a lot of depth. So I really appreciate it. And I wish I had it when I was growing up.
I'm glad. And again, it was one of those things where I did, as I was trying to figure out why she would do this, it had to be that mindset of there is only one path.
Yes.
Like if you think that there is only one way for you to do things and every other thing is the worst, then you will pursue that one path like as long as you can.
Sure.
And you're right. Like part of the book is her seeing that there are other paths. You can do other things. Like you can always come back to something later. Like one of the things that I like to, like I did a couple of school visits earlier this year, and I like to tell kids that, I did not go to school in writing. I did not get like my MFA. I didn't do all of it. Like I'm a lawyer. Like I always wanted to write books. I did something else first. I'm still doing that other thing. I'm coming back to work, I swear, in case any of my coworkers are watching. I start work again next week. But you can always come back to it. Like you can always continue doing what you want to do. There is no one linear path. It can't be just because you haven't been writing novels forever, you can't write novels ever. It's like, no, you can always do it later. Like it's fine. So that's something that she kind of explores in the book. And I'm glad that it kind of resonated with readers.
Yeah, I see a lot of comments. So great job.
Thank you for reading reviews. I'm scared.
What do you think Perla is doing now? Without any spoilers, just like as an adult, because she's seen here. But what's your vision for her? What she's doing now?
I would like to think so. Again, if she's, I think from what we have established, she had faked going to college. She had very, very intense, family, and then also just kind of societally, where she was at the academically competitive school, and everyone she knew, they were all going to like really great schools, and she was kind of jealous. So I hope that wherever she would be at this point in her life would be, kind of coming to terms with like, it's all right if other people are doing other things. It's all right if I'm doing this thing. I would like her to be like, okay.
I would like her to be
okay. Like wherever she is, just be okay.
Yeah, and maybe have more friends.
Yes, more friends that will be like, don't do this. This is a terrible idea. I will come with you to tell your parents.
Yeah,
just don't do this.
Yeah. That's part of her isolation too. Is she felt like she was just by herself, following her own path, and she had no one to confide in. So
it's just like you could literally tell anyone, and they'll be like, don't do that. It's like that's a wild. Like no. That would have been like a one chapter book, and she's like, I got, they didn't get into the school.
Don't do
Should I
that.
pretend to?
Do not do that.
Close your laptop and go outside.
So I have it's not a controversial question, but your mom is here. But what is one of the biggest lies you've told to your parents in high school? And you're an adult now, so it's okay. They can't punish you.
You say that, but like my mom is here and made me lunch, and we'll probably make breakfast tomorrow, and it'll probably be like an empty plate and be like, here. But I don't know. I have to, it's not so much a lie, but I did have like a reckoning moment where I backed our car into like the gate of our house, and it got this like huge scratch down the back. And I remember just like freaking out so much about it. I was like, oh my gosh, like my dad is gonna be so mad. You're never gonna let me drive again. And it's like, it's at our house, it's the gate, like it's so obvious. And my dad was just like, why do you think we let you drive the crappy car? And I was like, oh. But all that to say, like, there's a lot of internal pressure that we put on ourselves.
Yes.
That maybe it's not that bad. Maybe if Perla had just said something, it wouldn't have been that bad. But I will think on that other question.
Yeah, I want to know. I mean, maybe when your parents are not here or something, you could tell me in secret. So what's next for you after this? So this is her first YA novel again, but this is her second book, and I know you have more projects in the works. So please tell us what's up next.
So I have we talked about like my first middle grade book, Freddy versus the Family Curse, that came out last year. So I have my second middle grade book coming out in May of this year. It's called The Takeout. It's about a girl whose family has a Filipino Indian fusion food truck. And they're in a cute little like beach town. I don't cook, so like get your hopes down on that one. But like the food is described really well because I had a friend who her family owns like an Indian restaurant. And I was like, please help me with this, and she was kind enough to help. So they own this food truck, and a pair of celebrity twin chefs open up a Filipino Indian fusion restaurant in town with very suspiciously similar recipes. So it's about this middle grade girl kind of dealing with that, and then me writing about food that I cannot cook. And then I've got another. I just mentioned this earlier, but I just turned in my second young adult book. It is about two ex-best friends that go to a music festival together, and their driver loses the keys crowd surfing, and they have to find a way to get home. So fun thing about this book is I kind of came up with the concept with it, like very, very rough concept. And then I met up with Pauline and Kat to have coffee and kind of like talk about writing and do some writing things. And they kind of helped with the what's the worst things about like music festivals. And I was like, oh, I need to write this down, like expensive food, like porta potties.
That's always number one. Porta potties. Worst thing ever. Those
little like details work their way into the book. So that is probably coming out next year, and I'll have more details about that soon. But I saw a cover, so I'll hopefully more on that soon.
Do you have a working title, or you're allowed to tell us what the title is?
So there is a thing now of like cover or of title reveals. I am not that creative. So it's We Are Never Getting Home.
Okay.
So sorry.
I could already picture like a movie, like a montage and like, oh, that's great. So I remember talking about that book, and now it's already written. I don't know what your secret is. So what's your writing process? Like, do you have a set schedule, or do you write when like the mood takes you? I don't know.
Well, what's fun? Like I mentioned NaNoWriMo, and that was when I first realized like, oh, I can really, put out like a really terrible, but I can put out a draft in a short amount of time. Like 30 days is really wild to have 50,000 words. It's a lot, like something like close to 2,000 words a day. Like you really have to push through on that. But that's when I learned like, okay, I can do this. So if I was really under pressure, I could put out a draft, and then the cleanup is what takes up a lot of time for me. So I usually, I work during the day, and then when the kid was asleep, I would work at night. But all that to say, now I have another kid, so like I don't know. I don't know how this is gonna go. The writing could happen like whenever. Like I have no idea how that's gonna go. But one thing that has really helped me, and you can kind of, it's interesting when you write like little pieces of you and like work into your characters. Pearl is really into spreadsheets. I literally spreadsheet everything. So like, spreadsheet. Like she has a whole spreadsheet of like how she's going to infiltrate the school. And I, spreadsheet out, like I have a ton of spreadsheets of like how I would plot the book, like where would be, this beat or like this plot point, and like who are these characters and who are like, I have all these spreadsheets because if I have to put something down, like in the middle of a chapter, for example, which I usually, you have to if somebody's like screaming, having all those notes and spreadsheets make it so I can more easily jump back in instead of like, okay, let me reread what I last wrote. Oh my gosh, that's terrible. Let me rewrite that. And then it's a whole thing. So I have spreadsheets.
I think you told me once that you can't just sit down and not know what you're going to write.
Yeah.
And I think that's so like awesome. Like that's so organized. Like I'm the exact opposite. Like, am I going to do today? I don't know. Okay, I have work. What am I going to do after that? I don't know. So it seems like you're like Perla.
I know, it's terrible. I did graduate from places. I graduated from places. We have spreadsheets, and like that's our only similarity. But yeah, I have to. Time is like at a premium these days. So I was like, I have to know what I'm doing before I sit down. Otherwise, you just sit there and you kind of like put pressure on yourself of like, I didn't get anything done. I was sitting here and then ended up on like TikTok for 2 hours. Like, well, what am I doing? So like, you have to like, I have to get this chapter done today is like something that I can like concrete check off something on my to-do list and be done with it.
And you also have a collaboration with another writer, right?
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's called The Cookie Crumbles. It's another middle grade. It was pitched as the Great British Baking Show meets Knives Out. It is a lot of fun. It's with Alicia Dow. She is a trained pastry chef. So that one like has like legit good food in it. And she's actually, I've read some of her other works before where she includes recipes in her books. Like she has another middle grade called Just a Pinch of Magic coming out that has recipes. I'm like, oh, they're so good. And she tests all of them out and she posts them online. It's going to be great. So we are currently working on that and making it, twistier and more mystery-ish. So if anyone's got any good, recommendations for like movies or TV shows that I can stream in the remaining days of the maternity leave, then let me know.
Which is what, a week?
Like less than. I've already gotten texts from my coworkers being like, "You're coming back, right?" I'm like, yes, I am.
So you're a famous author now.
I still need healthcare.
That's something responsible Perla would say.
Right. On my
Healthcare.
spreadsheet, healthcare, check.
Yeah. Okay. Do we have time for a lightning round of questions? Okay. So I have some quick questions
All right.
for you. Don't think too hard about them.
Don't worry.
Like, don't worry.
Okay.
Okay. What's the last book you read by a Filipino American author?
Aaron and Chada Kelly's Shirley Marisol Rainey, which is a chapter book about a girl who's playing kickball at school and hates PE. And I was like, oh, I get it.
Okay. What's a book you will always recommend?
Besides my own.
Besides your own. In addition to your own.
The book that I've been telling everyone about, I think I stole from your bookstagram, which was Sabah Tahir's All My Rage.
That's such a good.
So I was like, I remember reading this and being like, oh man, what am I doing writing about a girl pretending to go to college? But it was like, they're very different books. So it's like an amazing author, but it's like when you read books like that, you're like, oh, wow.
Yes. And you're just, okay. Tacos or burritos?
Burritos.
Favorite Filipino dish?
The really garlicky longanisa that like you smell like for days.
Yes. NSYNC or Backstreet Boys?
Backstreet Boys. Like someone's gonna like confront me in the parking lot and be like NSYNC.
Like I am NSYNC, so I'm gonna see you in the back. And okay, which author would you like to collaborate with in the future? Any author that you pick?
Ooh. Oh my gosh, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
One author that I've read a lot of lately is Kirsten White. She writes like very like immersive kind of dark YA, but I've also been reading her middle grade, which is like a gothic mystery. It's also just really fun. And I was like, that's because I've been on like that mystery kick as I'm trying to write this Cookie Crumbles murder mystery. I was like, oh, that would be a lot of fun.
Good. And then my last question is, if you can go on a book tour with any author, who would it be?
Ooh. So this is completely selfish, but I know Alicia Dow bakes really well. So if we were to go on tour, it would have to be somewhere with like Airbnb style, right? Where we'd have access to a kitchen and be like, oh, should we go out, or like, should we just bake something? Oh, I don't know what I'm doing. And then she would kind of do it. But, I don't know. I feel so lucky to have like access to all sorts of like really amazing authors, just like online even.
Yeah.
Like the fact that we can do like virtual events and like, Instagram takeovers and things like that. I can't even like dream. It would be amazing to meet Erin and Chada Kelly, who is, the last Filipino American author that I just read the book of. She is fantastic and she is so kind. And she, when I wrote Freddy versus the Family Curse, she actually reached out to me and offered to read and blurb my book. Because she must have known that I was like, following her on Instagram and like liking things and being like, hey, can we be friends? Can you read my book? So she's wonderful.
I think Instagram has helped a lot of authors reach out to readers and vice versa, and I think it's great. So I like how we can just like, hey, I'm friends with Randy Rebar now, so he's gonna come and be in my book tour. So I like that you have access to a lot of authors now, and we're always here to promote you. So
Hey.
yeah,
I will say the squeamishness never goes away though. I feel like I still like I'll DM somebody and be like, hi.
yeah.
And then I'll keep looking at my phone and like looking away. It's like it's terrible.
Like check yes or no if I can like ask you a question.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel about you actually.
Oh.
When we first started talking to her, oh my god, she's writing a book. She's gonna be published. And then you asked me to be in conversation. Like, are you sure there's no other authors that want to do this with you? So I was like, oh my god, Tracy said, can you do this? Oh, hell yeah, I'll do this with you. Why not?
I instantly thought of you, and also you plied me with very good sushi. So I was like, of course,
Yes,
of course.
and a lot of sake.
Yes,
So,
that's true.
that's great. So I am out of questions, but if there's any questions from the audience. Oh wait, are we playing that game that you mentioned?
Yes. So I don't know if any, real quick, if you follow me on Instagram, I'm at Tracy Badua Writes. What is your handle?
Book Nerd Cat with a K-A-T.
So I had posted earlier that I have some extra, this is not a personal statement, shirts that are modeled by my husband and my mom and my baby. So I think if you ask, I think we have limited supply, but for the first couple of folks who ask a question or tell us the most cringeworthy lie that they told in high school.
Yes.
Like, even if you don't have a question, we just want to confess, you get a shirt.
It's a safe space. Although
that's broadcast online.
We are broadcasting live in the internet, the interwebs. But
right, so don't do anything too incriminating, please.
Yeah.
I mean, don't be like, I murdered a man. You're like, oh no. Yeah. Okay.
Something I think you're
cringeworthy.
Yeah.
You're like,
spirit
no.
of high school, like something you lied about in high school, or a question. And I'll let Tracy pick.
Oh, but I did see a hand up front. Yes. Yeah, I it's interesting because writing a novel is, at least on the YA and middle grade space, there's a surprising amount of uniformity that you kind of have to do in terms of the plot and what happens in these different chapters. The resolution, for middle grade, it should be somewhat happy. You can't have everything be terrible for 8-year-olds. So I took a class. It was through the UCSD extension, literally how to write for kids. And it was the basics of main character, plot. These are what different kinds of structures are, just to kind of get myself learning the terminology, because I had to learn how to write a book. Because I knew how to write emails and work stuff, but writing a book is so different from that. And then I still do read a lot of craft books because I feel I'll read books All My Rage and be like, how? So and my first thought is let me learn how to do this. I don't know if I have the fortitude for an MFA, but I can read books. I can do this. So one of my favorites lately was emotional craft of fiction is something that I've been kind of telling a lot of folks about, because it's because a lot of my craft books, but I like that one because when I was writing the contemporary novel, because I can't solve everything with wizards, I was like, oh, I have to use emotions. And it has exercises in it of like, if your character were to do this, how would they react? Or like, it like makes you think about it, which I needed to do because contemporary is so hard.
Yeah. Also set in real life. So
Find me for a shirt later. In the back. Yeah, so I feel like so in the book he mentioned there are a couple of friends that are mentioned in the book. So Tessa is someone Perla meets in college, and she's kind of like fun and freewheeling, and is also just casually super smart. And I feel like I just know a lot of people like that, just like really like wow, you went to like amazing universities and are like really good at what you do, and you're just really cool. With Camilla, she is the friend that went to the same high school and has kind of that similar mindset of like, we have to be doctors, lawyers, we have to be this and this and this. And you can like hide your boyfriend that works at the fake TGI Fridays, or, you can do all these things. And I feel like again, it's not based on a specific person, but at least with that, like I drew from a couple of just like those little stories that like I ran into like along the way of the girl, like, the hiding the boyfriend that was I forget what I called it. Bartleby's is a fake TGI Friday Applebee's thing. I think I mentioned like buffalo chicken dip in there.
yes.
Yeah. So like little things like that were, I just I wanted to make sure I threw some, some detail into there, because it really fleshes out the experience of like what it's like to be in a competitive environment and have to act a certain way. So no, it's not based on one person specifically. Right there, just it's gotten right. I now am the person who, when they want to take a very complicated government document and make it simpler, they bring it to me, because they're like, Tracy writes for kids. Clearly, she can write for bureaucrats. So, I was like, it's a nice skill. I was like, okay, I can do this. I can take this really complicated concept and like do a one pager on it. But that said, it's also like swung the extreme way where now, if you compare my emails that I write these days versus to when I first started, there are a lot more exclamation points in my professional emails. I think I crossed the line, started using like emojis, and I was like, I need to reel this in. These are professional colleagues. These are not just people I'm like writing like about my books. Like, yay! I was like, I cannot. So, sorry, work friends. Okay, over here. So when I actually started, I think, writing with the goal of publication, I started with like a dystopian YA, because we all did, right? We all have like these dystopian young adult novels just like sitting around where like she's the only one that can save the world. But as you listen to me talk, I was like, it's kind of how I write. And then someone was like, wow, you would have really great middle grade voice. I was like, oh, so like an 8 to 12-year-old voice. Cool. Which was, worked out for me. But switching between middle grade and YA, like I definitely, there are very concrete differences in how you approach the characters, the kind of not the topics you can tackle, but like how they tackle them. Whereas like Freddie would go to his parents first to be like, I'm having this problem, like I need some help. And you have to have a reason for their parents not to be able to help them. Whereas Perla didn't get in. She wasn't like, her immediate thought was like, I'm just gonna hide this. So like, there's like a difference in approach. And it is hard to switch back and forth. So like a little bit of a side on that, like if I'm writing middle grade, I have to kind of read middle grade. I can't kind of switch back and forth like mentally. It's like because then otherwise like it gets too intense if I start reading like adult or YA while I'm writing middle grade. Little things. Find me for shirts. Okay. Back there? Yes.
Oh, first
Yes.
confession.
Yes, yes.
Yes, confess.
Nice. I love it. I love it. That is the best confession.
That's a great
Oh my gosh.
idea for a book.
She called it. She just called it. Everyone heard that. She
I'm
called
writing it right
No,
now.
Yes. Mhm. So there was always the maybe because I wouldn't have pictured myself actually writing middle grade when I first started. So there was always a maybe, but my joke with my editor was when we were first talking about this book, she was like, so have you considered writing adults? Because I think there was maybe a possibility of like, maybe we could age her up, maybe we could do something. And I was like, look, Jen, I haven't even processed my teen years. Like, you gotta wait. You gotta wait. Like, just give me like another 20 years and maybe I'll write adult. So maybe.
Confession?
Okay, fine.
You can get my shirt.
No.
Ask your husband where to buy.
Aww.
Super impressive.
Yes.
The first is, and by the way, these great job. Really nice energy. So, no, I have to get the college. Did I just call the university to verify their enrollment?
Oh.
I would say they're definitely enrolled.
Where's that bill going? Like, where are you sending that money to? We'll talk.
So having gone through the college application process, I was called more than 1,000 years. And I'm at this point, even given what there's so much pressure now. I have promised myself that I have more starting high school, middle school.
Mhm.
There's so much pressure around this. I'll start teaching. So I just kind of see life going to this stage. Is there a message there for the other ways to make it's really felt that from the kids. They bring up who are you? Why are you still here? I try to like actually like my word now is so intense. Good for how you you're a message. That's not what
Yeah, I mean, when I was writing the book, I definitely wanted to go into, like I said, just the idea that there isn't one set path and there is not one set way to get there. And I think it's interesting that like you mentioned that like you try to be hands off, but like your kids are like super driven and fantastic anyway. And it's one of the things that I try to make in the book of, again, it's not just her parents saying like, you have to do this. She feels like she has to. And her friends, like everyone she's around in high school, they're all like this. They're all competitive. They're all driven. So it's like the pressure is coming from all sides. Even if you as a parent don't say it, like they're wondering, why didn't I get to this school? Because so-and-so got it. So that kind of works its way into the book, and I'd like to say that there's some, definitely some talk in there about like comparison and how, like, really at the end of the day, like it's like you got to cut yourself some slack. And if Perla had done that for herself, if other people had done that for her earlier on, she may have felt more comfortable, dealing with reality instead of coming up with this whole wild plan. But that's kind of, I mean, the message definitely isn't fake going to school. Please don't do that. So I just remember to give that disclaimer. If anyone is still watching online, don't do this. Don't do this. Oh.
Without spoilers, was there a side character that changed drastically from story to
Ooh, yes. And I would actually, okay, without spoiling it, because there was already some questions that were asked about it. With Camilla, for example, the friend that went to her high school and is like really super driven, she wasn't very present in the first book at all. But one of the, now we're delving into like craft talk, but one of the things I was talking to my editor about, she was like, Perla spends a lot of time in her head. You really need to be able to have her say things out loud and interact with people. So one of the ways we talked about that, I was like, well, we need a character for her to bounce these ideas off of. And so it was just like, how do we build up these side characters so that she doesn't spill her secret, but also is able to kind of start seeing the world in a different way. If you read the early awful NaNoWriMo draft that I did, it really is just centered on her, and she really doesn't deal with anyone else. But like you, as in life, you kind of have to deal with other people in order to grow. So. Confession? That's my husband, sorry. Confess.
what do you guys about the worth of and if you have time, it's like, what advice would you give to your younger sister?
It's a really hard question. So you can answer that.
Oh my gosh. Well, what did you write your personal statement about?
I was reading another book where the character applied to 71 colleges. I just finished it. Yeah, 71. It cost him like $5,000.
I was going to say the admissions or the application fees.
I wrote about being a first generation immigrant. And so at the time, I'm dating myself. So this is circa 1995, I think, right? So I wrote about being an immigrant because I came to the U.S. in 1988. So the whole change, and actually and how I was very grateful to my parents for bringing me to the country, and I talked about their sacrifices. But I do have a story. So my rejection, my deep heart, I didn't get into Belmont is NYU. So I didn't get to NYU, and I thought my life was ruined. That was the one goal I had in life. But that was also the only college where they asked for a different topic. So I had written this really awesome personal statement, except NYU was different at the time, and I think I was running out of time, so I scrapped some crazy ass ugly statement. And here I am. Now I'm here because I never got into NYU.
Oh my god.
Yeah. But is it
Yay!
great? Yay! I know. Now I'm here with Tracy. Oh my god.
I wrote mine about. I was in NJROTC. So I wrote,
Oh.
and I was one of maybe 6 girls, and I wrote about how I became the commanding officer. So
Wow.
take that, guy. I'm just kidding. All you guys are great if you're watching. I'm sorry. I forgot the second part of the question.
What advice would you give yourself?
Oh man.
So it's okay that you didn't get to NYU because here you are.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll work out.
It'll work out. It'll work out.
You will get somewhere. It'll be fine. I was actually thinking about this the other day because I'd gotten into a couple colleges, and one of the ones that I was thinking about was like would have been on the East Coast. And then so I stayed local. I went to UCLA. It was like 30 miles from home. And kind of in retrospect, like I'm really glad I stayed close to home because I don't think I was like ready to go like out into the world yet. I think it would have been a mess. So like I'm glad that I was like close to home and still got like a bunch of Filipino food and like laundry. So it was good.
Yeah,
it was good.
laundry's key.
Laundry's key. Okay.
Thank you so much. Let's give it a nice round of applause. Congratulations on this personal statement. And of course, thank you so much, Kat, for being a
Thank
wonderful
you.
I can't wait to eventually have your book in the world, right? And have you back here.
Oh, thanks. One day.
For our virtual audience, thank you much for joining. You can still get some signed books. If you want to get personalized, give us a call here at the store so make sure to get your order in. For everyone who's here in person, we're going to start the signing line very soon. If you've never done an event here at Mystery Scott before, basically we're going to line up going this way. If you have your handy dandy ticket with your number on it, that will have everyone lined up for the signing. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.